All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. So just a quick wrapping up of chapter 3. We talked about and went through some examples, and we did the four-step process, but we didn't actually define what that four-step process is, right? So we have a four-step process for figuring out how economic events impact that equilibrium price and quantity. So the four-step process that we are going to be using is, the first is to draw the supply and demand model before the economic event or change took place. The second step is determining whether the economic change impacts demand or supply. The third step that we have is then deciding whether the event causes a shift to the right or a shift to the left, and then, whatever it is, draw it. Draw the new curve. On the diagram. And last but certainly not least, the whole reason why we're doing this is identify new equilibrium and then after you identify the new equilibrium, we are going to compare it to the original. So we're answering the question, does price decrease or increase? And does quantity decrease or increase? Specifically, our equilibrium. What's happening to the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity? P star and Q star. Questions on this four-step process? Four-step process. All right, let's go ahead and practice it. We label price on the y-axis, quantity on the x-axis. P comes before Q in the alphabet. P is to the left of Q when you're labeling the graphs. We have a downward sloping demand curve. We have an upward sloping supply curve. The market is going to be rent. And so we draw the supply and demand model before the economic change took place. And part of drawing it is labeling that equilibrium price and quantity when we start out, our P star one, our P1 star, our Q1 star. Questions on first part? Okay. So now I have to give you some sort of situation, right? So let's say that there is a new apartment complex coming, which there actually is. Being built, let's just say it's opening. It's currently being built, but let's say it's opening in Chadron. So the first thing we have to do is figure out whether this economic change is going to affect the demand or the supply. So whether this is going to affect the demand or the supply. And one of the factors of our supply, one of the determinants of supply, is the number of suppliers. So number of suppliers is one of our determinants of supply. And the reason for this is because this supply curve really is nothing more than the willingness of existing apartment and homeowners to sell their, to rent their property out. And so if we want to think about it, and if we want to break down what this supply curve really is, the supply curve is, in a way, a combination, not in a way, it absolutely is. It's a combination of all the individual supply curves, right? So, we've got, the Chadron apartments supply curve or whatever, right? We've got, Phil who rents his house. That's a supply curve. That's a particular person that's saying that, I'm willing to rent this one bedroom at a certain price, right? They have, let's say 2 bedrooms or something like that, and they're willing to rent it at, $1,000. So when we add an extra supplier, that means that this whole thing is going to shift to the right. So greater supply is going to cause a shift to the right. So number one, it's going to impact supply because of the fact that this is the determinant of supply. And then figuring out whether it shifts to the right or to the left. So for this one, we can just use our definition of what supply is. Supply is just all the different willingness to accepts of all the different producers summed up horizontally. So if we add another person or add another entity, that's going to shift it to the right. The other way that we can do this is we can do our horizontal interpretation, right? And we can say, well, let's ignore demand and just fix supply at some price. Do I imagine that there's going to be less provided, less provided, the same amount provided, or more provided, right? So you kind of fix the price and you say, is it going to shift to the right with there being more provided? Is it going to stay the same, or is it going to shift to the left with there being less provided? So since we're told that there's a new apartment complex is opening in Chadron, very obvious that it's going to be more, right? At any given price, there's going to be more goods provided on the market. So we know that this is going to be a shift to the right. And then last but not least, we're going to identify the new equilibrium. So now where the new x meets the spot, we've got P double star, Q double star, and we need some little arrows. So we show very clearly that price is decreasing and quantity is increasing. Questions on the 4-step process?